I'm Tracy Sabol. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, Path of Destruction. The death toll continues to rise amid the wildfires in Hawaii. We have the latest. Mission of Peace. A closer look at the Vatican's outreach regarding China and the war in Ukraine. High treason. Niger's coup leaders announce plans for the ousted president. And ready to help. Pope Francis reminds the faithful of the power of reaching out to the Lord. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the feast of St. Maximilian Kolbe. Our top story tonight, at least 96 people have died in the wildfires in Hawaii, and the state's governor is warning that that number could rise.
I will tell you this, as a physician, it is a harrowing sight in Maui.
The wildfires are the deadliest on U.S. soil in more than a century. Search and rescue crews are still searching street by street to find potential survivors. One report says the blazes traveled up to 1 mile each minute. Our church leaders also reacting to the tragedy. The Bishop of Honolulu says many of the stories are heartbreaking.
One of my best friends here told me that he lost his uncle and aunt and their child in the fire, and they just died burned in their car. So when you hear things like that, it's just heart-wrenching.
During Mass yesterday, Bishop Clarence Silva also read a letter from the Holy Father who said that he is praying for those who lost loved ones. We go now to Rob Van Tassel, President and CEO of Catholic Charities Hawaii. Rob, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We are so sorry, and please be assured of our prayers for you and everyone going through this in Hawaii right now. First off,
thank you.
Can you sort of give us the situation on the You're welcome. Situation on the ground right now. We understand all but a couple of the fires have been contained. Can you give us maybe the full picture of the devastation? I know it's really just starting to come to focus.
You're absolutely right. Thank you for having me here today. The Catholic Church has always had a presence there in Maui. Catholic Charities Hawaii has been there for decades. We're all just grieving right now. We're being there with our loved ones, our family. Here in Hawaii, we refer to family as ohana, and we are all one ohana. As to the degree of the devastation, you're seeing it as I'm seeing it. As the pictures are coming out, we're all grieving. We're hearing the stories directly from our coworkers, from our family, from our friends, of loss of life and property. And we're going to be there for people. We're going to walk with them. We're going to provide the essential needs as we understand what's needed, and we will continue to answer the call.
Yeah, and we have heard it described as apocalyptic. I mean, pictures really don't show the devastation of it. What are the needs of the people right now? I mean, I know there are so many, but what would you say are maybe the most urgent needs?
Well, you started off correctly, prayers. Knowing that we have the prayers and the support of people, the understanding and the patience to know that this has now become, has always been sacred ground, but is even more sacred now as we all begin to assess and understand what's going on. So please be patient with us as we go about the work. We are there now supporting those who are out in the recovery efforts. We will be there for the relief as well. So what we see now, really, we have food and water on the island. That's still coming in from the airport and from all the ports. So what we really need now are funds to give people gift cards so they can go and purchase food there on the island and work with them as they get their documents together, bring their loved ones together, and as they gather, we'll be there with them gathering and continuing to assess the needs. But for right now, we do have a website set up at catholiccharities.hawaii.org. That's all one word. On our website, there's a big pink outline of Maui, the island. You can click on that and make a donation. All donations will go 100% directly to the relief efforts and to the people there in Hawaii, of all faiths and all denominations. That's who we are. That isn't our mission. We serve all people, regardless of their faith, regardless of their culture or their background.
And Rob, amidst all this tragedy and devastation, there is a sign of hope. The Catholic Church that was left standing really miraculously, it survived, even as the fires destroyed the neighborhood surrounding it. Talk to us more about that and what that means to the community.
It does mean a lot, but we also need to remember that people are still grieving the loss of their loved ones and of their property. And yes, it's hopeful to have that church still standing and providing hope. However, right now we're just being with all of the families there that we can and walking with them, and we'll continue to be there with them.
And Rob, we are definitely praying for all of you, and we'll continue to keep you all in our prayers. One more time before I let you go, if people want to help, and I know they want to, can you give us that information again where they can go and provide help for you all?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for this opportunity to talk to the rest of the Catholic community throughout the world. Our website is www.catholiccharities.hawaii.org. And when you get there, you'll see a landing page where you can click on the donation button. And again, I want to give everybody the assurances that 100% of what you donate will go right to the survivors, their families, and the work that we're doing there.
And Rob, thank you for all the work that you're doing and continue to do so. Again, we're praying for you. God bless you and God bless your work, Rob.
Thank you so much. God bless.
Our President Joe Biden tweeted today that he mourns with the people of Hawaii and is praying for those who have been impacted. He also posted several items aimed at helping survivors. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports.
Tracy, this morning, President Joe Biden returned here to the White House from Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. And on social media, he posted that the government is laser focused on getting aid to survivors, including a one-time $700 payment per household.
Mr. President!
President Joe Biden on the South Lawn walks right by reporters shouting for him to come over and take questions. But regarding the horrific disaster in Hawaii, today the president tweeted, FEMA's temporary sheltering assistance is now available for residents who were displaced from their homes by the wildfires, allowing survivors to shelter in hotels or motels temporarily as they develop a long-term housing plan. He urges residents to apply for FEMA assistance. And in the press briefing room,
and we're going to continue to be available to them. We're going to continue to do a whole of government response in Hawaii and Maui specifically to make sure that they have everything that they need.
Meanwhile, in the race for the White House, one of President Biden's Democratic challengers is changing his response to a question about abortion. Robert Kennedy Jr. said Sunday he would support a federal abortion ban after the first trimester. SBA Pro-Life America called that a stark contrast to the Democratic Party's radical stance of abortion on demand. But Kennedy's campaign now says he misunderstood the question, adding, Mr. Kennedy's position on abortion is that it is always the woman's right to choose. He does not support legislation banning abortion. President Biden also releasing a new campaign ad attacking Republicans over entitlements.
But I think we should try to look at entitlements, look at restructuring Medicare.
The Republican platform actually says of the many reforms being proposed, all options should be considered to preserve Social Security, and current retirees and those close to retirement can be assured of their benefits.
Tomorrow, President Biden heads to Milwaukee, Wisconsin to give a speech on the economy. And the speech comes as gas prices hover around $4 a gallon and buying groceries is not cheap. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, the head of Democrats for Life of America says that she is disappointed by the about-face by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Kristen Day says in part, quote, RFK's statement that he supports limitations on abortion after the first trimester is one that Democrats should rally behind. The quick retraction shows how out of touch Democratic strategists and elites are with mainstream America who agree with abortion limitations after fetal viability. Well, the Vatican is continuing its diplomatic efforts regarding both the war in Ukraine and the church in China. Cardinal Matteo Zuppi is continuing his outreach to Russia and Ukraine, and now he is set to travel to Beijing in September. EWTN Vatican journalist Alexei Gatovsky has more.
Good evening from the heart of Vatican City, where the tireless efforts of Pope Francis and his envoy, Cardinal Matteo Zuppi, continue in the pursuit of peace between Russia and Ukraine. Following visit to Kiev, Moscow and Washington, a new chapter in this mission is poised to unfold with Beijing as the next destination. Pope Francis personally confirmed this development on August 4th in an interview with Vida Nueva magazine. A source close to Cardinal Zuppi informed me today that the Cardinal already might be heading to Beijing in the beginning of September. Casting our minds back, it's worth noting that on February 24th, China unveiled its 12-point peace plan, featuring crucial points such as ceasefire and the immediate commencement of peace talks. Shifting focus to the near future, Pope Francis' voyage to Mongolia is poised to make its own contribution to peace. According to the head of the World Union of the All Believers, Leonid Sevastianov, the Pope has expressed his interest in a meeting with Patriarch Kirill during a layover at Moscow's airport. I spoke with Sevastianov and he told me that the permissions for a papal flight to stop are already granted by the Russian government. Looking ahead, the Holy Father, in a recent interview with Vida Nueva magazine, has also disclosed his plans for a peace meeting with religious leaders in Abu Dhabi, scheduled for the end of November, just before the United Nations Climate Summit in Dubai. Insights from Lebanon's L'Orient Le Jour newspaper indicate that this initiative has been catalyzed by United Arab Emirates President Mohammed bin Zayed with the intention of fostering discussions between the Ukrainian and Russian leaders during the International Climate Conference scheduled from November 30th to December 12th. Pope Francis uses Vatican diplomacy to promote peace, engaging with all parties and implementing what he once said, "God is God of peace, not of war," and stands with the peacemakers. In Rome, Alexei Gotovsky, EWTN News Nightly.
Nicaragua is once again targeting the Catholic Church, and now officials have frozen the bank accounts of a Jesuit university. The government alleges the school is involved in financial crimes. Human rights experts and church leaders are denouncing the move, while leaders of the coup in Niger say they want to prosecute the country's president for high treason. The move comes hours after those who led the mutiny said that they were open to dialogue to resolve the mounting crisis. A trial against the democratically elected president would further undermine security in the West African nation. And we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including the president and his family, analysis of the investigations into Hunter Biden and others, plus analysis of the possible targeting of Catholics by the FBI. Lawmakers are reacting to Attorney General Merrick Garland naming a special counsel to investigate the Biden family business. Democrats say the move increases transparency. Republicans accuse David Weiss of trying to give Hunter Biden a sweetheart plea deal that later fell apart. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us now with more. Eric?
Well, good evening, Tracy. You know, top House Republicans are accusing the Biden administration of attempting to stymie their investigation into the Hunter Biden following the Justice Department's appointment of a special counsel. Oversight Committee Chair Congressman James Comer and Judiciary Committee Chair Congressman Jim Jordan say Weiss cannot be trusted.
Both lawmakers made separate statements. Congressman James Comer wrote, quote, "The Biden Justice Department is trying to stonewall congressional oversight as we have presented evidence to the American people about the Biden family's corruption." Congressman Jim Jordan wrote, quote, "Weiss has already signed off on a sweetheart plea deal that was so awful and unfair that a federal judge rejected it. But Democrats praised the decision as a step forward."
Hunter Biden will be treated by the Department of Justice as he should be. But Congress needs to stop investigating a private citizen and stop this fishing expedition to try to link President Biden to Hunter Biden's conduct when there is no evidence to support that.
House Speaker Kevin McCarthy says there's plenty of evidence showing the president lied.
President Biden told us he'd never gotten money from China, that he had nothing to do with the Biden family business. We've now found out in last week, no, he did have something to do with the business. He did go to dinner, and the next day they got a new Porsche and they got $3.5 million.
Reaction from senators was similar. Judiciary Committee Chair Democrat Dick Durbin wrote, quote, Attorney General Garland has committed to avoiding even the appearance of politicalization at the Justice Department. U.S. Attorney David Weiss is a distinguished prosecutor. But the ranking Republican, Senator Lindsey Graham, said, quote, the only solution for this problem is to have a new set of eyes on all things Hunter Biden.
Meanwhile, in other news, Georgia state prosecutors are expecting to seek more than a dozen indictment charges against former President Donald Trump as early as tomorrow. A grand jury will hear the charges that Trump and his allies tried to overturn the 2020 presidential election results in that state. Tracy?
Well, Eric, I understand the charges may include conspiracy to commit forgery and even fraud. I mean, those are pretty serious charges.
Yes, they certainly are. You know, we found out only about those charges after they appeared on a document on the Fulton County Courthouse website earlier today. Now, a short time later, the document was removed and the website also labeled the case as open. It was later changed to pending. The mix-up even forced the county DA to put out a statement saying that no charges have been filed just yet. Again, we are expecting a decision tomorrow. Tracy?
Okay, thank you so much, Eric. And joining us now to weigh in on this and more is Christopher Bedford, executive editor of the Common Sense Society. Chris, welcome back. Great to have you on again. A lot to get to, but first, try and help us unpack this. As Eric mentioned, Fulton County briefly posted a document listing charges against former President Trump. Then it removed it, and now apparently there are reports that the DA's office is saying there are no charges against Trump. This is all really confusing. What do you think is happening here, Chris?
Well, I think Donald Trump is, as he's facing across the country, he's against a pretty gun-ho prosecutor here, someone who really is ahead of their own ballgame as far as prosecuting the president. Now, these are charges, these kind of investigations that are already being brought to the president's attention at the federal level. Georgia's perfectly within their rights to follow these as well. That's what we're seeing. But the grand jury hasn't finished its deliberations yet. These things usually take 1 to 2 days. Some notable witnesses are on the docket scheduled for tomorrow. So I don't expect there to actually be any legitimate charges yet. But I think the DA got a little ahead of themselves. They've already got everything written up, expecting charges. Maybe they've got a couple of reports, and that's what was leaked earlier or accidentally posted earlier.
Yeah, and if the former president is charged, which of course seems imminent, this would be his 4th indictment. How do you see this playing out, and what impact do you think this will have on his reelection bid? I mean, right now he is the clear frontrunner in the Republican Party, and he even made an appearance at the Iowa State Fair over the weekend.
I don't think it's going to impact his power with the Republican voters negatively at all. None of these things have. It's so clear at this point when we're seeing multiple investigations, the same charges repeated over and over again. The entire impeachment in general being relitigated, this time by the DOJ, opinions of the former president treated as crimes, that this is political. So the Democrats, on one hand, have been extremely frustrated. The historian Doris Kearns Goodwin was on MSNBC over the weekend lamenting, what's it going to take to make the Republicans get rid of Donald Trump? We have to mobilize the entire country. There's a real palpable frustration amongst Democrats that this is backfiring. And even amongst independents and Republicans in particular, of course, Republicans, there's a lot of people who say, well, maybe Donald Trump is guilty of some of these things, but still, these obviously seem like political attacks against him. His enemies have run against taking him down, and now they're going to do it. Whether or not this in fact impacts the general election is still something that's going to be interesting, because it does create a sense that there's a lot of smoke there for independent voters who may be less likely to vote for a return of President Trump.
Oh, Chris, thanks so much for weighing in and for your insights. Always appreciate it. Well, up next on EWTN News Nightly, Christ is the answer. Pope Francis tells the faithful what to do when we feel lost. Plus, the latest in the investigation of the FBI and the so-called radical traditional Catholics. Reported Reported last week, 2 lawmakers on Capitol Hill are raising more questions for the FBI. This after they say a memo that appeared to target traditional Catholics featured input from field offices in Los Angeles and Portland, Oregon. Originally, it was believed to be only Richmond, Virginia that produced the memo. And here to give us a unique perspective is former FBI agent Kyle Seraphin. Kyle, thanks so much for coming back on. We appreciate it. We talked to you when this first came out of the Richmond field office, but what did you think when you heard that multiple field offices actually coordinated on this memo?
Well, it kind of confirmed my suspicions, and moreover, it actually confirmed my worst concerns about the FBI, which is that they're not being honest with the American people, and moreover, that they were hiding this sort of anti-Christian bias that was sort of building among some of the intelligence analysts. And I only have visibility to what people are willing to bring forward. So when we brought a whistleblower to Congress, we had access to what was going on in Richmond. It's not surprising that some of the redacted stuff actually showed source work in other field offices, but it does kind of tell us that this exists on both coasts of the United States in 3 different major field offices. And so this is not a small or otherwise like individual person who has created this thing. There's a small culture within the FBI that is out there actively moving against Christians because they're actively moving against conservatives. Let's be real. The issues that they brought forward about LGBTQ stuff and abortion and the border, these are not just Christian positions. These are mainline conservative positions.
Yeah, kind of was going to ask you this. I mean, as a former FBI agent and also as a Catholic, I mean, how does this make you feel?
Oh, it's a horrible betrayal. In fact, the FBI is one of the most Catholic organizations I've ever been a part of. It has more Catholic people working there, particularly in the agent corps, than most people could imagine. I mean, it is very prevalent. It's very common that if you talk to somebody about something over the weekend, they'll tell you what they heard at Mass, and they don't have to explain it to you. It's understood because there's a huge number of active Catholics working within there, and that makes sense because law and order people who want to do the right thing, tend to sign up with that sort of idea, and there's a lot of Catholics that are in that group. I actually knew of agents who reached out to me when the original document was exposed that told me when they were training at Quantico, they would actually head down to some of the mentioned parishes in the Richmond field office area, and they would attend the Latin masses down there because that was what they were accustomed to. So they're not just Catholics within the FBI. There's probably what the FBI would call radical traditional Catholics or Latin Mass Catholics. And, what they're basically saying is they're going to open up investigations into some of their own. We already know that the Inspection Division has launched up to 800 new investigations on FBI agents. This should be very concerning to people. This is like secret police stuff. And the compliance purge that my friends and I saw, this is an ongoing issue, and they are literally looking to move people that are going to put their religion and their sincerely held beliefs in front of what the government asked them to do. And by the way, that's what they're supposed to do. That's what the constitutional oath says they should do.
And Kyle, I'm curious, I mean, given your experience, I mean, do you believe there could have been a good reason for this type of targeting of so-called radical, traditional Catholics at all?
No, not at all. This is a First Amendment protected activity. It should be sacrosanct and the FBI should not be involved in it. But this was not the first toe in the water for this type of thing. This happened going back at least to 2006, where they were going into Muslim mosques. And so the idea that they would go into a Catholic church, it's much more mainline and it's certainly more bold. But if you look at the way they did it in a way they thought they could get away with, which was trying to carve off what they thought was a fringe group of Catholicism, which they believe is a smaller group of Christianity. At the end of the day, like I said, these are mainline positions. So this is a pry bar to open up a door to go after all Christians. And it's people that don't agree that the God should be the government. If you believe in God with a capital G, then you don't believe the government gives you all the goods. And the people that are on the left, and particularly the really radical progressive leftists, do have that sort of secular religion that they're espousing. And that's what they're moving towards.
Kyle, we have about 30 seconds left, but I really kind of want to get to this one right here. I mean, we know the FBI did withdraw this memo, but that being said, where do we go from here in terms of maybe holding the FBI accountable for its actions, but also rebuilding trust and the reputation of many Catholics?
I think it's going to be a major problem. It's going to be an uphill battle. And as my friends who are both Catholics and former FBI agents who have been removed over this kind of stuff, they think that this is a 15-year battle minimum. They need to reform the agency aggressively. They need to pull the intelligence work out from underneath this agency. It doesn't deserve it, and it's not good for the American people. It needs to be either traditional law enforcement or no FBI at all. There's plenty of other federal agencies, and you can scatter all the agents to places where they can go do a good job and not be, burdened by this really terrible brand that they become.
Okay, thanks so much for weighing in. We really appreciate it. God bless you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much.
And finally tonight, Pope Francis says in times of fear and difficulty, one way to feel better is to ask for help from Jesus.
La domanda, perché Gesù ha fatto questo?
In his Sunday address at the Vatican, the Holy Father says even the apostles became fearful and found strength in our Lord who conquered death, sin, and the devil. And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, now known as X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sabol. Good night and God bless.